So, you want to hear a story, huh? I would give anything to go back to when I was 12 years old, loading up Borderlands 2 on my crappy computer and joining a party of random people speaking a language I didn't understand. But what didn't occur to me when I was 12 was, why is Pandora so messed up? Wait, there's other planets? What the hell is Iridium, and why am I giving it to this paranoid crackhead? Well, fear not, my friends, because today I'm going to be answering all of those questions, except maybe the crackhead one. We're going to dive into the full story and timeline of the Borderlands series, because what better time to do it than with Borderlands 4 fresh out of the oven? To fully understand the story of Borderlands, we first have to go way back to a time where all this talk of vaults, bandits, and claptraps hadn't even happened yet. So allow me to introduce you to perhaps the most important character in Borderlands. Once upon a time, there existed 6 galaxies that the games take place in, and in them, 6 beings, all with their own distinct special abilities and drawn together by a mysterious force that seems to be specific to them. We don't know where they came from or how they came to be, just that they've been around for all of the recorded history of Borderlands. These beings are the Sirens, and they're most easily identified by their special tattoos. The earliest recorded scripture we can read about them says that they were part of a Siren coven, and among them was a woman named Nyriad. You see, there could only exist 6 Sirens at any given time, and when one dies, the power holder chooses who to pass it on to. But if nobody's selected, it's given at random to someone else. The Sirens resided peacefully until one day the Eridians had contacted them asking for help. The Eridians resided on their own home planet in the 6 galaxies called Nyriad, which translates to First Landing. And sometime after they traveled here and established themselves, they noticed something odd about the stars. They were rapidly disappearing, and after discovering why, it was then that they went desperately to Nyriad and the Siren Coven for help.
When the Eridians found me, my sisters tried to fight them off, but I stopped them. I saw what lay behind their open hands. I knew that anyone who would ask for my help was already lost.
See, they became aware of this being that was destroying the stars, and they called it the Destroyer. In order to counteract it, the Eridians and the Sirens had built a series of vaults across the 6 galaxies, all with their own unique purposes. They sealed the Destroyer in one of these vaults, but after all of this was said and done, the Eridians had just vanished one day, and we've never actually seen one in the flesh. We have, however, seen the Guardians. The Guardians were made by the Eridians in their own image as these artificial life forms for the sole purpose of guarding the vaults and the artifacts that they left behind. They are biomechanical constructs and don't really possess any free will except for a couple of special ones that we'll see further down the line. The Guardians aren't actually what we see, though. The body is being piloted by the actual Guardians somewhere else, so their true form is very much a mystery. But what is it that happened to the Eridians? And why was Nyriad so important? All the questions you'd have right now will be answered in time, but with all this being said, we're now brought to a new age that would change the 6 galaxies forever. Thousands of years later, humanity began and progressed, eventually discovering faster-than-light travel. And over the next few hundred years, they colonized the 6 galaxies under one large central government. But a bunch of mega-corporations didn't like these guys, so they ganged up and started a brutal 30-year war with them. The corporate alliance would emerge victorious, and they took control over the 6 galaxies, becoming the new government bodies. But with the new power vacuum becoming apparent, things were a bit tense, and they would go on to negotiate for a few years. The 26 corporations would sign a treaty called the 30-Year Accord, assuring 30 years of peaceful trading, cooperation, and friendship between them all. And it only took 4 months before it got completely fucked. Due to the escalating competition, it eventually boiled down to a bunch of military conflicts that would later be referred to as the Corporate Wars. Among the 26 corporations, a lot of the smaller ones would ultimately be eliminated in the 9-year conflict. And it was just a handful that were remaining by the end. Only Atlas, Dahl, Hyperion, Malawan, Tedior, Torque, Vladoff, and Jacobs remained, although Jacobs pretty much sat out the entirety of the war. S&S Munitions had also survived, but only through some agreements since they didn't really have much military strength. All of these corporations did happen to primarily be weapon manufacturers, which probably had a large hand in each of them surviving the war. But what resulted afterwards was a massive wealth disparity between the top 3 and bottom 97% of people in the 6 galaxies. As directors and shareholders gained absurd amounts of wealth, pretty much everyone else was struggling to survive, and so they saw a massive ongoing migration of workers moving to sparsely or completely uninhabited worlds. 21 years after all of this, there was a boy named Typhon de Leon, and with his parents, they were some of the first migrants to a planet called Pandora. They had become turd farmers there in order to earn a living. But 4 years later, when Typhon was 16, his parents were torn apart by skags. Naturally, with nothing left for him on Pandora, he wanted a more exciting life and a new way to earn money. So he snuck onto a transport headed for Promethea, and once there, he became a freelance treasure hunter searching for Eridian artifacts to sell to Atlas. Around this time, Atlas was on its back foot against all of its competitors, and they were desperate for anything that might give them an advantage. A year after Typhon arrived in Promethea, he had finally discovered the hidden entrance to a vault, and with it, a key. But instead of opening it himself, he sold it to Atlas for an insane amount of money. Once Atlas opened it, they found a stockpile of Eridian weapons and technology that they could reverse engineer. This allowed them to make insane leaps in their own technology, faster than any of their competitors. They pretty much immediately used this new tech to expand their military, and they began training a regiment of elite soldiers called the Crimson Lance. Atlas kept Typhon close and kept paying him, and they eventually convinced him to travel the galaxy with some other people as a kind of peace envoy. They arrived on Athenas and met a siren queen named Dido. And Typhon finds out that his other members are just agents of Atlas tasked with stealing Eridian artifacts. Around this time, he would woo Queen Dido, and he resigned from Atlas to stay with her. But several years later, she passed away, and an order of monks, known as the Order of the Impending Storm, took control of Athenas. Typhon was still living there, but he left in disgust when one of the monks asked him to bring them another siren. He would then end up getting hired to search for a vault on the Jacobs' homeworld of Eden 6 by the grandson of its founder, Montgomery Jacobs. Atlas, however, had discovered similar ruins to Promethea on Pandora, and they began sending a search crew to scour the planet hoping to find another vault. They would eventually expand operations here, and rumors circulated. More and more people began flocking to Pandora, including those seeking vaults known as Vault Hunters. And it's also around this time that a young girl named Athena was kidnapped by Atlas with a sinister military goal in mind, and our boy Typhon returns to Pandora to resume his simple life as a turd farmer. But after Atlas uncovered the first vault and chased rumors of another one to Pandora, the Dahl Corporation wormed their way onto Pandora as well, under the guise of mineral harvesting. To facilitate it, Dahl brought in 30,000 convicts from other worlds' maximum security prisons as cheap mining labor. They also had some of their soldiers, led by Colonel Hector, go to Pandora, telling them they'd be able to rest on a paradise planet for their excellent work. Instead, however, they were taken and forced to labor away as miners. A decade later, Dahl discovered a huge amount of methane on Elpis and began large-scale mining operations on it. Once they did, they discovered a shaft seemingly of Eridian origin and sent Colonel Tungstina Zarpedon and a detachment of men to secure the site. A day later, there was a sudden mass seismic event, seemingly triggered by the methane mining, that would later be known as the Krakening. And this caused Elpis to lose pretty much all of its atmosphere, trapping the Dahl miners and soldiers underground in the process. Dahl, of course, quickly abandoned Elpis, leaving Zarpedon and her men even more trapped. But a year later, Atlas, seemingly feeling the pressure of Dahl's presence, detached a large force of Crimson Lance to Pandora to forcibly take locations, causing Dahl to panic and once again leave behind one of their colonels and their men for dead. They really like doing this. Around this time, there was a cave-in, potentially caused by Dahl themselves, that trapped Hector and his men under Mount Scarab. This would come back to bite some people in the ass way later, but it's around this point in the timeline where your story begins. Whatever Vault Hunter you choose throughout the games, the story continues, and let me tell you, it gets pretty crazy from here. Pandora is the first planet we find ourselves on in many of the games. Its terrain varies from Mad Max-looking deserts filled with bandits, grottos and jungles brimming with wildlife, and the more urbanized areas, which brings us to the humans that live here. We have the aforementioned bandits that definitely have some screws loose, but on the other hand, we have the people that are still kind of sane, except for her. Our first Vault Hunters we see in the game's order are Roland, Brick, Mordecai, and Lilith, the Siren of Borderlands 1. Along the journey of these 4 Vault Hunters, they meet some rather important characters, the first being a claptrap bot and Angel, who's actually the one telling them what to do and how to open the vault via this telepathy thing that she just has, I guess, okay. To get the vault key, the Vault Hunters would have to find its fragments, and Angel instructs them on how to find one of them. Not long after, though, the Atlas Corporation and its elite forces, the Crimson Lance, come into contact with the gang. A siren named Commandant Steele, leader of the forces on Pandora, tell them that the fragment they found belongs to Atlas and they need to return it, but her demand was to no avail. Another character they meet is Patricia Tanis, who's best described as brilliantly insane. She's taken a serious liking to learning about the Eridians and the substance leaking up to Pandora's surface, Iridium. Tannis really wants to help the Vault Hunters, and she assists them in finding 2 more fragments. She tells you the location of the final fragment, but then you run into the Crimson Lands, and it turns out it was all a trap. Tannis lied to you, and she gave the key to Atlas already. You find Tannis in an Atlas prison, and she apologizes, saying that it wasn't her intention to betray you. To make amends, she tells you the location of the vault that Steel is already on her way to. It's not too late just yet. Fighting through Atlas and the Vault Guardians, you eventually reach Steel, and with her, the Vault Key. Apparently this vault can only be opened once every 2 centuries, and Steel had no idea what she was in for. Pandora is in fact where the Eridians had sealed a certain creature. After opening the vault, a massive tentacle impales and devours her and her elite guards. It's up to the player to defeat the Destroyer, and once it's dead, Angel congratulates you. She suggests selling the vault key to Tannis for her study since it's pretty much useless for the next 200 years. So you've opened the vault and killed the Destroyer, basically all a Vault Hunter ever dreams of. But not long after, a rogue Atlas assassin contacts you with a mission in mind. This is Athena. She was kidnapped at a young age and forced to kill her family like all Crimson assassins. Her motives were on a much grander scale than what we actually see in the games, but the issue at hand is destroying a massive Atlas weapons depot on Pandora run by General Nox. So you do a bunch of killing and sabotaging until you reach Nox. He's the man that previously appointed Commandant Steel before she died, and the one who forced Athena to kill her family. He was in the process of trying to off himself, but he fights you anyway. And with his defeat, the Atlas Corporation's attempted takeover of Pandora was put to a stop, and Atlas would go on to abandon Pandora, leaving its Crimson Land soldiers behind. But the vault and power vacuum left in its wake were drops of blood in a pool of sharks.
Hi, I'm, Jack, obviously.
With the opening of the vault, it left a massive scar on Pandora, as the iridium underneath its surface began to seep out more than it ever had. While all this unfolded, a Hyperion satellite was watching, and the company knew that this was their time to shine. They began mining operations on Pandora, and they started the construction of a massive space station in the shape of an H called Helios, attempting to fill Atlas's shoes. Now let me turn your attention to a very special someone, a lowly programmer at Hyperion that had different plans for the company. It's the villain we all know and love, Handsome Jack. Even though he worked at Blizzard for 7 years, at the time he was just Jack. After Athena had helped the Vault Hunters defeat General Nox and his armory, she roamed Pandora as a mercenary, and it's here where we meet our next set of Vault Hunters. Athena, Nisha, Wilhelm, Aurelia Hammerlock, a Jack doppelganger named Timothy, and a combat-equipped claptrap that Jack created. Jack managed to recruit them all and get them on a spaceship before it was ambushed by members of the Lost Legion. These are the soldiers that Dahl had sent to Elpis, led by Colonel Zarpedon, and left there to die. As a result of the ambush, our Vault Hunters crash on Helios and meet Jack himself as he's being shot at by members of the Lost Legion. The reason Jack hired this band of Vault Hunters is to find the vault on Elpis, but before they can start attempting to do so, they would have to escape Helios and Colonel Zarpedon, who is being protected by a guardian named the Watcher. See, after Zarpedon and her men were trapped, they went on to discover the Elpis Vault, which had corrupted all of them. The Watcher is one of the Guardians we know of that actually acts of its own accord. It had come to Elpis to warn Zarpedon of Hyperion and Jack. So Jack manages to get the Vault Hunters to the surface of Elpis via the moonshot cannon meant for transporting cargo, and now that they're actually on Elpis, it's time to get to work. Except Zarpedon took control of the Eye of Helios and is now trying to completely destroy the moon. And with no moon, no vault. This girl named Janie helps us get back on our feet, and once we get back to Jack, we meet up with Moxie and unjam Helios' systems to allow for travel back to Helios. But we also find out that Lilith and Roland are on Elpis too. See, Jack wants a robot army to retake Helios, but first, we're gonna need a few things. An advanced military-grade AI, and a ton of robot chassis to actually house it. So he has us search a crashed Dahl warship to try and find something of use. And it's here we meet a rather important person. Well, it's not actually a person, it's an AI named Felicity. And we find her with this former Dahl dude that tried reprogramming her to be his girlfriend.
What is wrong with you, my love? Poop Dick always had the nicest things to say about you. Oh, I know.
The military AI is exactly one of the things Jack is looking for, but now we need a robot chassis to actually put her in. It's at this point that Roland and Lilith are actually helping Jack, because of course they don't want the moon to be eviscerated. So they let Jack know about a location he should visit, an overrun doll robotics facility. Another person of importance we meet is a Hyperion engineer named Gladstone that says he's working on a robot that can endlessly digistruct more robots. Wow, it's almost like this is exactly what we needed. Obviously, there's no better time to complete Gladstone's project than now, so we assist him in constructing, well, the constructor. And once it's assembled, we see perhaps one of the first things that Jack does to reveal just how cold he can be in pursuit of his goals. Against her will, we insert Felicity into the constructor to be reprogrammed and repurposed into a slave AI that manufactures robots for Jack's army. She struggles and fights to prevent this fate, but she can't do anything. With Jack's army now fully in the works, it's time to retake Helios and its eye to stop Zarpedon from destroying the moon. But Gladstone expresses his concern for his colleagues trapped in their sectors. Jack sends us to go and rescue them, and just when it seemed like Jack had a heart, it was all out of selfishness, and he launches them, with Gladstone out of an airlock because he thought one of them might be working with Zarpedon. And at last, the group faces Zarpedon one final time.
You must turn back. The power within the vault would trigger a chain of events.
The group heads to the Eye of Helios to reset it, and it turns out that the Eye isn't just some piece of Hyperion tech. It's actually the Eye of the Destroyer that our original set of Vault Hunters killed. The power of the Destroyer's Eye, combined with Iridium slag infusion, became a weapon capable of destroying Elpis entirely, and they had to reprogram it to bend it to Jack's will. Witnessing the cruel nature of Jack, Moxie, Lilith, and Roland tell him and the Vault Hunters how to reprogram the Eye, but it turns out that it was all a trick meant to destroy both Jack and the Eye.
Friggin' liars! Friggin' cowards! They're no better than faggots!
Since he couldn't harness the Eye's power anymore, there was only one thing he had left to do. Jack and the Vault Hunters make their way towards the vault on Elpis, fighting through the Eridian Guardians and the corrupted Lost Legion members. Since the vault is already open, all they have to do is enter, but then they're met with its guardian, the Empyrean Sentinel. Once it's defeated, the vault's artifact appears.
That's it? That little thing. The hell did... Oh my God! I get it! I understand! I understand everything!
Hey, handsome.
Jack sees a vision in the future of the warrior, an ancient Eridian weapon awakening on Pandora. He was only thinking one thing in his mind. He wanted revenge. And now, he had a direct path and goal in mind to achieve it, starting his campaign to kill every last Vault Hunter and Bandit on Pandora.
I will pay you to kill yourself.
During Jack's descent to madness, he did a few things. First, he got his mask, of course, covering the symbol Lilith burnt into his face. Then he strangled the current CEO of Hyperion to death and took over, becoming Handsome Jack. They began monopolizing Iridium, making Hyperion absurdly rich, and Jack would soon become the face of the company. In time, Jack poisoned the Atlas CEO, and since they were already in the gutter after the events of Borderlands 1, this only made their situation worse, which eventually led to Jack outright purchasing the Atlas Corporation. Jack and Wilhelm would go on to steal the Vault Key from Tanis, and around this time, being ex-Atlas himself, Roland salvaged the remnants of the Crimson Lance, who were left behind by Atlas, forming a new group to resist the oppression of Hyperion. He dubbed this group the Crimson Raiders, basing them in New Haven. When Jack learned of this, he ordered Nisha and Wilhelm to wipe it out, forcing the group to relocate to an old doll mining ship known as Sanctuary. One of the things Jack swore to do if he ever became CEO of Hyperion was to kill all of the claptraps due to their incompetence. And during a DLC in the pre-sequel, he eventually executes a command killing all of them, throwing them away into landfills. All of these events are what lead us to the start of Borderlands 2. Leading Vault Hunters to Pandora with a large-scale propaganda campaign, Jack glorified the planet as a vault hunting paradise. And so we meet our next set of Vault Hunters that fell for this. Axton, Salvador, Zero, Krieg, Gage, and of course this game's Siren, Maya. Maya was actually the next to be Siren Queen on Athenas, but she had left in pursuit of a different life after learning she was to be used as a political weapon. The train they're on, of course, is a trap set by Jack, and failing to kill them, they end up in one of the Claptrap landfills known as Windshear Waste. And so we meet this Claptrap that's only alive due to the efforts of his buddy Sir Hammerlock. While he brings us to Hammerlock, Angel actually contacts us and lets us know that we need to find Sanctuary, and if it wasn't already obvious, we have to stop Jack. Claptrap's ship was taken by a local bandit leader named Flint, and once we get it back to leave the area, Roland contacts us. We then get a power core for him that powers the town's shields, but Roland suddenly goes missing. It turns out that Roland had left Scooter with specific orders to execute something called Plan B if something ever happened to him. This plan was to make Sanctuary fly like it had used to, so they could evacuate the area, but the plan ultimately fails once we try it. With no other choice, we have to rescue Roland, and the only lead is that someone named the Firehawk might have him. But the Firehawk is actually Lilith, and she explains Roland was taken by a bandit group named the Bloodshots. See, when the Crimson Raiders were formed, the main group of Vault Hunters from Borderlands 1 had fragmented a bit, and Lilith became an undercover bandit hunter under the name Firehawk. Once we infiltrate the bandits that captured Roland, we finally meet him, only for him to get abducted by Hyperion right in front of us. But we fight the loaders and bring him back to Sanctuary nonetheless. He tells us about what Jack is trying to do. He's trying to awaken the warrior, and to do this, he's trying to open the vault that it was sealed in by the Eridians. Roland sends us to meet a spy of his who's actually Mordecai, along with his bird Bloodwing. Mordecai explains that soon there's going to be a Hyperion train passing by that will most likely have the vault key on board. To blow it up, we've got to talk to Roland's qualified and distinguished demolitions expert, this 13-year-old girl. Once the train's derailed, we run into Wilhelm in the wreckage, who looks a little different. In defeating him, however, it's not a vault key we find. It's this suspicious-looking power core that Angel says is very important. So of course, Roland decides to recklessly use it as Sanctuary's new power core, which gives control to Angel, allowing her to lower Sanctuary's shields. Jack then reveals that Angel had been working for him, and now moonshots are raining down on Sanctuary. It's time to execute Plan B, and have it actually work this time. So now with Lilith on board, we fuel her with Iridium so she can help get it off the ground, and she teleports Sanctuary to safety. However, we accidentally get teleported away during all this, and now we have to find our way back, since the fast travels don't work anymore. Angel contacts us again, saying she can help us, but after what she just did, I don't know if I want to. She convinces us she had no choice, and she knows we can't trust her anymore, but she still wants to help us stop Jack. So she instructs us to find a beacon that would allow us to fast travel back to Sanctuary. Once there, we meet up with Roland and Lilith, who express the need to find the vault key before Jack uses it. Angel chimes in that she can help, but both Lilith and Roland, also feeling betrayed by her since she assisted them in the first game as well, are hesitant to trust her again. Angel then reveals that she's actually the one who has the vault key, and that she's at a heavily guarded facility that has 3 major security obstacles that we need to pass. Firstly is an energy field that will obliterate anything non-Hyperion that attempts to enter it. Second is a heavily fortified and armed bunker. And lastly, there's a door that'll only open to handsome Jack. Her only request is to not let Lilith into her chambers, no matter what. So first, we meet with Mordecai at a place called the Wildlife Exploitation Preserve, a facility meant for experimenting on animals with the waste of iridium refinement, slag. Mordecai tells us that Bloodwing's collar has an upgrade for Claptrap that would let us bypass the energy field. But she was kidnapped by Jack and brought here. We find Bloodwing in the preserve, severely altered by the effects of experimentation, and Mordecai wants to sedate her to take her back peacefully, but Jack blows her up with the explosive collar on her neck.
Oh, now I remember. Explosive! No! God damn it, Jack! I'm gonna kill you! You hear me?
Cool! We bring the upgrade to Claptrap, and Roland tells us that the next step is to deliver a note to a bandit leader known as the Slab King. This bandit leader is none other than Brick, and like how Lilith became Firehawk, Brick had been more forcefully told to leave Sanctuary since his brutal interrogation methods were causing issues for the Crimson Raiders. We give him the note, and Brick says he'll help. Reuniting with Roland, the two make amends. Brick's men and aircrafts would prove very useful, but there was still the issue of bypassing a security measure meant to only be used by Jack himself. Angel let us know about the city, opportunity, and how we could use some Jack clone technology to bypass it. Jack's ego and body doubles would ultimately be his downfall, as we loot a watch from one of them that mimics his biosignature. From there, we gather samples of his voice from some kiosks, allowing us to simulate his narcissistic demeanor. Jack, at this point, forces Angel to go dark on them, but this wouldn't stop the incoming attack. Beginning the assault on the facility, Claptrap disables the energy field, and we make it to the top. Except the bunker is not a bunker. It's a highly advanced combat robot that... Okay, never mind. Angel tells us the password to the final door, and we mimic Jack's voice, descending into her chambers. Angel reveals to us that Iridium alone can't charge the vault key. It needs a catalyst, or in other words, a siren.
To truly stop Jack from waking the warrior, you cannot just steal the vault key. You must destroy his catalyst. You must destroy me.
See, Jack hadn't always been a psycho like he is now. He was traumatized at a young age, being raised by his abusive grandmother, and eventually, he actually had a family. Until one day, siren tattoos began manifesting on his daughter's arm. She demonstrated a unique ability she had called phase shift, and she first used it to fix a broken vending machine. One day, though, a bandit leader kidnapped her and tried to put her up for sale. But while frightened, she had used her siren ability to take control of one of the bandit leader's turrets. She killed the bandit in the process. But to her and Jack's horror, she accidentally killed her own mom. It was with her help that Jack was able to achieve so many of Hyperion's goals and rose up the ranks before his big plan to take over the company had started. Angel is Jack's daughter, and if you recall, it was her that guided us in the first game, and guiding her was, of course, Jack. Jack was actually the one who orchestrated the first wave of Vault Hunters and their quest for the Vault. This also explains why Angel's able to speak to us seemingly telepathically. Jack had been pumping Iridium into his own daughter to forcefully charge the key. She tells us we need to destroy Jack's catalyst if we want to truly stop him from opening the vault. So with the assistance of Roland and Lilith, we destroy the Iridium injectors. Jack threatens us, deploying loader after loader, and eventually he begs us to stop. But it's not enough. Angel instantly goes into severe Iridium withdrawal and says her final words to her father.
Dad, I have to tell you something. You're an asshole.
With Jack's plan seemingly halted for good, you, Lilith, and Roland start talking about what's next. But Jack isn't finished with us yet.
I'm going after Jack. Roland! Son.
He teleports behind Roland, shooting him in the chest and killing him instantly. Lilith tries to rush at him, but he slaps a collar on her. He tells us that now he has nothing left to lose.
If I chop you up in a meat grinder and the only thing that comes out that's left of you is your eyeball, you're probably dead.
And he's making it his mission to show us just how much we still do. He orders Lilith to kill us, but she's able to barely resist and teleports us away instead. And that's exactly why Angel didn't want Lilith there. But with the Crimson Raiders' two leading figures gone, Mordecai steps up and tells us we need to get to the vault and stop Jack ASAP. After discovering its location from a Hyperion info stockade, you, Brick, Mordecai, and Claptrap fight through...
Stairs? No!
Okay, you, Brick, and Mordecai fight through Hyperion's forces, finally making it to where Jack is using Lilith to charge the key. We fight Jack, but as soon as he's about to keel over, the key finishes charging and he opens the vault. The warrior awakens and is under Jack's control, so we defeat it, and Jack dies in a way befitting the snake that he is. Pandora is free from Jack's reign, but when Lilith goes to destroy the vault key once and for all, a hologram shoots up, revealing a map to vaults on other planets. That's the end of Borderlands 2. But before we talk about the next game, we do need to talk about some DLCs. After the events at the Vault of the Warrior, Hyperion was thrown into chaos. And in the middle of this, a Hyperion scientist named Nakayama, who was obsessed with Handsome Jack, began attempting to clone his mind and body on his ship. He succeeded at cloning Jack's mind, but at some point before he could figure out how to clone his body, his ship crash-landed on the continent of Agris. Sometime later, Sir Hammerlock invites us to go on a hunting trip with him to, you guessed it, Agris. During our hunt, we're repeatedly interrupted by messages from Nakayama, who is under the impression that we're after him and his research. After we finally convince him that we're not, he seemingly gets mopey and begs us to come after him. Okay. We do so, coming across eldritch abominations born from Nakayama's attempt to clone Jack's body, before ultimately finally coming face to face with Jack's #1 fanboy. As we get ready to fight, it's suddenly interrupted as he falls down the stairs and dies. Okay. We leave him there, and our time in Agris is over. But unknowingly, we left his recreation of Jack's mind still fully intact and still in his body. A year or two after the death of Handsome Jack, Lilith hears rumors about an ex-Atlas assassin going around killing former Atlas personnel. She recognizes that this must be Athena, and last time Lilith saw her was on Elpis inside the vault when Athena was still working with Jack. So Lilith sends Brick and Mordecai to track her down and bring her back to figure out why she was working with a psychopath. Around this time, Moxie sends Zero to investigate an old secret Atlas project called Project Gortys, which brings us to the beginning of Tales from the Borderlands. This is Fiona and Sasha, sisters that live with their adoptive father, Felix, and he's a master at his craft. Living in a place called Hollow Point, they aren't your average family, you see. They're actually con artists, and they're getting ready to sell a fake vault key that Felix had created. He gives Fiona a wrist pistol gadget in case things go south, and Fiona heads to the meeting spot. There, she meets August, the middleman between her and the buyer, who's also Sasha's pseudo-boyfriend. Sasha explains the cover story she used for Fiona and how she got the key. And after a quick interrogation from August, she passes and the three of them head to the next meeting site. Around this time, we jump to the perspective of a man named Reese. He's a member of Hyperion on the Helios station who, like many other Hyperion employees, idolizes Jack. Reese, accompanied by his best friend Vaughn, who's an accountant, heads to his boss's office so Reese can receive his long-awaited promotion. Parting ways with Vaughn, Reese finds that his boss has been replaced by his rival Vasquez, who had just recently thrown their boss out of an airlock. He really took a page out of Jack's playbook, didn't he? It's revealed that Vasquez is actually the buyer for the fake vault key as he gets a call from August. While Vasquez is occupied, Reese uses his mechanical eye to hack his computer and yoink the details of the deal, including the price of $10 million. Once Vasquez hangs up, he informs Reese that effective immediately, Reese is now a janitor. Back in the hall with Vaughn and their other friend Yvette, Reese proposes that they crash the deal and buy the vault key for themselves to use as a bargaining chip to climb the ranks. Vaughn uses his position as an accountant to transfer $10 million to himself, and the two of them steal Vasquez's car to head down to the surface of Pandora, while Yvette stays behind to provide support. Now on Pandora, Reese and Vaughn head to a museum called the World of Curiosities where the deal is happening. On the way, they ask for directions and almost get murdered by bandits before Yvette sends a loader bot to assist them. Then they make their way inside the museum where they find a number of characters from past games, including Professor Nakayama. Reese takes his ID chip, and then he and Vaughn are suddenly jump scared by a creepy man named Shade. Shade guides them to the meeting spot where August and Sasha are already waiting for them. During the discussion, Sasha notices Reese's cybernetic eye and realizes that if he scanned the key, that he'd be able to figure out that it's a fake. So she slams the case shut and begins trying to call off the deal while she steps towards the vent where Fiona is waiting to attach an EMP device to disrupt his eye. As Reese is getting ready to scan the key, Fiona activates the EMP, which also short-circuits his mechanical arm holding the key, so he drops it and it shatters, revealing that it's a fake. At that moment, a bandit named Bossa Nova crashes in while being chased by Zero, who's still trying to learn more about the Gortys project. Bossa Nova yoinks the briefcase of money and flees. Reese and Vaughn then attempt to steal Fiona and Sasha's car, but they get caught. August appears and begins shooting at them, forcing them all to flee together, but during the ride, Fiona and Sasha start trying to kill Reese and Vaughn. Reese contacts Yvette for help, but she tells him that she can't help him anymore since Hyperion started looking for them. Now desperate, Reese shows that he has Nakayama's ID chip, which he might be able to use to help them track down the case, since it has a tracker built into it, and Nakayama's security clearance is higher. He's able to convince the con artist to not kill them, and he tries to insert the ID chip, but the flow of data ends up being too much, and Reese is knocked out cold. When he wakes up, he finds that they've already arrived at where the briefcase is, thanks to Vaughn. They end up at a bandit race, getting ready to start, and the group comes up with a plan to sneak into the arena through some underground tunnels. They get split up, Sasha goes with Reese, and Fiona goes with Vaughn. Reese and Sasha discover that the arena is actually built over an old Atlas facility, and they run into Zero while Fiona and Vaughn are forced to compete in the bandits' death rally. Eventually, Reese, Sasha, and Zero find themselves in the center of the arena with Bossa Nova, who has the money case. After a brief struggle, the case ends up making its way around the arena. Felix finally catches the case and betrays Fiona and Sasha by trying to take it himself, unaware of the fact that the case has a bomb built in to prevent brute forcing the lock. So he gets obliterated. Goodbye. Zero confronts Bossa Nova about the Gortys project, and after figuring out he knows nothing about it, Zero just kills him and leaves. Loaderbot shows up, but accidentally makes the floor collapse, causing Reese to fall into a hidden Atlas room below them. The others join him, and Reese and Fiona end up finding a pair of Atlas devices that, when combined, generate some kind of map. It's at this moment, a hologram of handsome Jack appears due to the chip Reese uploaded earlier. While he runs off to converse with Jack, the others discover that Fiona and Reese are the only ones who can use the devices, and that anyone else who tries is shocked. They then find a terminal that can only be opened by a retinal scan of an Atlas employee, and conveniently find one in a pod nearby. With him stuck and seemingly dead, Fiona is able to scoop out his eye and bring it over to the terminal. Once unlocked, the terminal reveals a message from him informing you that he's not dead and in fact he's just in suspended animation. Oh god, I hate to be this guy right now. We also see a video of Athena as the man warns that she's hunting down and killing every last Atlas employee, which is why he went into stasis. Lastly, the man reveals that the Gortys project Zero had been looking for was actually taking place in Old Haven, before suddenly Hyperion moonshots start raining down on them and they all take off. Reese and Vaughn get separated from everyone else while Fiona and Sasha make it back to Hollow Point. Their vehicle is damaged in their escape, so Fiona meets with Scooter. While he fixes it, Fiona and Sasha go to Felix's old hideout and find some gifts he left for them. Fiona's is an elemental upgrade for her gun, but Sasha decides not to open hers, still mad that he betrayed them. Suddenly, two mercenaries named Finch and Croker enter the room, and seeing an opening, Fiona shoots Finch with her newly upgraded gun. Then Sasha hits Croker with a frying pan, and they take off running. All of a sudden, they're also being chased by Athena, who they think is after their bounty, so they race their way through town back to Scooter. Once back at Scooter's shop, it's revealed that Janie's there, and that she and Athena are now dating. As Athena comes inside, Janie reveals that she made Athena promise to give up mercenary work and vault hunting, which still doesn't explain why she was chasing them, but they head off to Old Haven to meet up with Reese and Vaughn, except they're currently in a Breaking Bad episode. Reese talks more to Jack, and Vasquez shows up trying to kill them. He makes them start digging their own grave, but Reese hacks his gun, allowing them to flee, before Loaderbot comes to the rescue. They travel to Old Haven, where they find the Gortys project, but August suddenly shows up, and man, these guys can't catch a break. When Fiona and Sasha make their way inside, we find out that Vasquez and August are working together, and while Vaughn and Sasha are being held hostage, Fiona and Reese are forced to combine their devices with the terminal, ultimately adding them to this weird sphere. Suddenly, the sphere falls, and almost ends up off the platform, which causes the security system to activate and attack everyone. Reese and Fiona flee through a hatch, and eventually are able to make it out aboard Loaderbot before being stopped by Finch and Kroger. We're then introduced to Finch, Kroger, and August's boss, Valerie. Valerie asks Fiona who was behind this situation, to which she responds that it was Vasquez's fault. So Valerie shoots and kills Vasquez. She then tries to shoot Fiona too, but at the last moment, Athena drops in to rescue the group. Valerie flees, and the group activates the sphere, revealing it to be a robot named Gortys that Atlas had constructed to hunt down the Vault of the Traveler. But she's still missing a few pieces. So Gortys and the group set off to find the first piece, arriving at an abandoned Atlas biodome. They run into a man named Cassius, who Vaughn stays behind with, while the rest search for the part. During their search, Athena reveals that Felix actually hired her to help Fiona and Sasha develop the skills to protect themselves. He wasn't a total piece of shit after all. After they find it, Sasha reveals that Cassius works for Atlas, and Athena immediately tries to kill him, but Brick suddenly appears and attacks her. If that was enough, Valerie also comes out of nowhere and shoots a rocket at them. Valerie tries to hold most of the group hostage, but after a fight and Gortys taking off, it turns into a mass chase, and Gortys is reunited with her missing piece, giving her legs. Meanwhile, Fiona goes after Brick to help Athena, and eventually Valerie and Mordecai jump in, defeating Athena and Fiona. Brick and Mordecai take Athena away and bring her back to Sanctuary for further questioning, while eventually the other members of the group are recaptured by Valerie. She threatens Gortys to reveal where the last piece is, and Gortys points at Helios, saying it's there. Finch and Kroger show up in the group's caravan and tell Valerie that Cassius and Vaughn took off together. Gortys keeps getting interrogated, and she explains that the Vault of the Traveler teleports all over the universe, only staying in each spot for a few minutes. But once she has all her parts, she can forcibly summon it and keep it in one place. Now knowing everything, Valerie decides to use the group to sneak aboard Helios with her men to get the last piece. While everyone tries to come up with a plan to get to Helios, Jack reveals that the piece is in his office, and Reese points out that they need a rocket to get there. Fiona proposes that they ask Scooter to make them one, so she and Sasha go and convince him. While they do, Reese, Finch, and Kroger head back to New Haven to collect Vasquez's face to use with the New U station to disguise Reese as Vasquez. And with all the parts in place, the group, with Scooter tagging along, take their new rocket up to Helios. Along their journey, the ship's boosters malfunction, so Fiona and Scooter head out to manually detach them. But then Scooter gets caught on one of the boosters and tells Fiona to detach it anyway, or they'll all die. Our beloved Scooter explodes along with the detached booster, and one Cowboy Bebop reference later, the group makes it to Helios. Fiona, Sasha, and Reese, who's now disguised as Vasquez, infiltrate their way into Helios. And after a number of misadventures, including a silly finger gun battle, Reese finds out Yvette betrayed them, and he's able to get inside Jack's office. There, he finds Jack's trophy case, including the deed to Atlas, the last Gortys piece. as well as a number of other trinkets. Jack tries to convince Reese to be his successor, but after Reese rejects him, Jack takes control of Reese's arm to forcibly upload his consciousness to Helios and tries to replace the inside of Reese's body with an endoskeleton, but Reese is able to escape. As Jack locks down Helios to prevent Reese from leaving, Reese rushes to the Helios power core and sabotages it, causing Helios to begin falling towards Pandora. Finch and August take Gortys, Sasha, and the last piece away with them, leaving Kroger and the others trapped on Helios. Fiona and Loaderbot are able to find an escape pod, but Loaderbot stays behind to help Reese. Reese and Loaderbot then attempt to escape, but Kroger tries to stop them. Left with no other way, Loaderbot pushes Reese into the last escape pod and sacrifices himself so that Reese can get away. Reese crash lands on Pandora and finds Jack, who uploads himself back into Reese and tries to take control of him, but he rips out his implants and crushes them, killing Jack permanently. It turns out that the vault of the Traveler's guardian, the Traveler, was forcibly summoned when Gortys was made whole, and Fiona finds Valerie trying to kill Gortys because Gortys can't beat it, and destroying her will force it to disappear. Fiona and Sasha are forced to destroy Gortys, but at that moment, Loaderbot, having somehow survived, witnesses them seemingly betraying Gortys. Loaderbot then uploads himself into Jack's endoskeleton, disguising himself, and capturing Reese and Fiona. Before he captured them, Reese had taken the rights to Atlas from Jack's office to build it back up. Fiona became a Vault Hunter, and Vaughn became a bandit leader. When kidnapping them, Loaderbot tried to figure out if they really betrayed Gortys, but now, knowing they didn't, Loaderbot gathers everyone to reassemble Gortys and defeat the Traveler. Sasha ends up sacrificing herself while they fight it, but once they defeat it, in her last moments, she opens Felix's gift. The item inside fully heals her, and while the group celebrates, Reese and Fiona enter the vault together, finding this glowing chest. Once they open it, though, they disappear, and it's a mystery where they actually went. Meanwhile, when Brick and Mordecai took Athena to Sanctuary, Lilith had started interrogating her. Lilith questions her about why she worked with Jack, and she recounts all of the events of the pre-sequel. After Lilith had branded Jack's face, and he started tyrannically ranting about how he'd kill them all, Athena was out of there, not wanting to be part of it anymore. But in Lilith's mind, Athena had still greatly contributed to Jack's reign, and ultimately, Roland's death. Even if she had left him after the fact, Lilith didn't care, so she ordered the Crimson Raiders to execute Athena. But stopping the bullets with its power, the Watcher shows up, saying that they would need to recruit all of the Vault Hunters they could get, and now isn't the time for bickering, because a war is coming. This would spark some serious planning. So Lilith, Mordecai, Brick, and Tanis begin discussing what to do next with the Vault Key, and they also bring up how the Crimson Raiders are talking of disbanding since the Hyperion threat is gone and they don't have a leader anymore. At that moment, Sanctuary is attacked by a force known as New Pandora, and if you recall Colonel Hector and his men being left underground all those years ago, well, he finally came out. He uses a bioweapon called Paradise Gas on the residents, causing most of them to turn into plant hybrid monsters. And during the attack, Lilith and the others are forced to flee as she teleports everyone to safety. We run into Vaughn and his now dead group of bandits, and he lets the group use his camp as a new base of operations. It turns out that Cassius is actually involved in all this. Hector tricked him into helping make the gas. We head to the mine where Cassius is residing, and he wants to help us. Hector, having realized that Cassius is trying to help us make a cure, floods the lab with spores, causing Cassius to begin transforming. So he has us put him out of his misery, and gives us the tools necessary for Tanis to work on an antidote. With the antidote now in hand, the group begins the counter-assault on Sanctuary, and Hector, now backed into a corner, purposefully allows himself to mutate, becoming a giant plant monster, assimilating himself with Sanctuary and the Vault Key. With no other choice to save Pandora, Lilith kills Hector, causing Sanctuary to be destroyed, and the Vault Key is lost somewhere on the planet. Afterwards, Lilith stresses the importance of finding the remaining vaults, both on Pandora and on other worlds. She tasks the Crimson Raiders to split up and look for them while she and some of the others stay behind on Pandora to continue the search for the Vault Key. All of this being directed by the Crimson Raiders' new official leader, Commander Lilith. It is here we're going to talk a little bit more about Typhon de Leon, as he would prove to be a really important character in Borderlands 3. We do have to go back a little bit though, so stay with me here. Back around when Typhon had found the first vault, and Atlas started scouring Pandora for a second one, among the researchers was a woman named Lita. If you recall, Typhon had returned to Pandora to chill out and be a turd farmer again, but not long after, a beautiful woman showed up looking for him. This was of course Lita, and she wanted to find the rumored Eridian homeworld of Necrotafeo. She hired Typhon as a guide to help her find it, and she knew this, but he had a massive crush on her, and the two of them flew off in search of the planet. Which brings us back to where we left off with Lilith becoming the Crimson Raiders' new commander. She started gathering as many Vault Hunters as possible to find more of the vaults and prepare for the war that the Watcher had warned us of. Around this time, Maya had went went back to Athenas and quickly became the planet's new protector. Also, Zero decided to go to Promethea to work with Rhys and rebuild Atlas, but we don't really know why. Several years later, this brings us to the start of Borderlands 3 and our new Vault Hunters. Zane, Flack, Mose, and as always, our new Siren, Amara. Instead of the bandits all killing each other mindlessly like before on Pandora, they're now part of a massive cult called the Children of the Vault. They believe that the Vault map leads to a much bigger prize, something called the Great Vault. However, this cult not only spans over Pandora, but other planets as well, and these two Twitch streamers, Tyreen and Troy, are the ones spearheading the cult.
God Queen Tyreen, coming at you live from the HBC.
What the fuck is happening? The two were born conjoined, and Tyreen has the Siren ability Phase Leech, which allows her to leech powers from other living things. Troy has this as well, although it's a much weaker version, and it seems like he can only leech from Tyreen. Due to this, Tyreen sees him as a nuisance and a parasite. They livestream themselves killing people and showcasing their powers. They'd been brainwashing all the bandits, making them believe in their cause and that they're basically gods. So with this, Lilith immediately lets us know our objective. Since the Vault map was lost when Sanctuary got destroyed, we need to find it before the Calypso twins do. So we secure a COV propaganda center and find out a bandit clan called the Sun Smashers had found the Vault map in the desert, which actually happens to be Vaughn's clan. So we head over to him and he tells us that once his guys found it, they tied him up and are now bringing it to the Calypso twins as an offering. Great. We need to get there fast, so Ellie, Scooter's sister, gets us some wheels and we head to a holy broadcast center to get it back. We then give it to Lilith, but she tells us that it's damaged, and to fix it, we have to bring it to Tanis. As it turns out, Tanis can't repair the map either, but she shows us part of it. Our next destination is a vault on Promethea, and Lilith lets us know Ellie had been working on a ship for the Crimson Raiders. She makes us grab a couple things, but just before we're about to complete it, Tyreen and Troy ambush Lilith. They record and livestream themselves fighting her, and eventually, Tyreen leeches Lilith's siren abilities from her completely. They decide to let her live so the bandits can get to her, and then they steal the vault map and teleport away using Lilith's ability. After rescuing Lilith, we get on the ship we'd been preparing, and despite her powers being gone, Lilith and the rest of the group are as determined as ever to get to the vault before the twins. She dubs this ship Sanctuary 3. We don't talk about Sanctuary 2. Heading to Promethea, the Atlas home planet, we soon learn after meeting with Lorelei that Atlas is currently at war with Malawan. Lilith tells us it would be beneficial to get on Atlas's good side if we want to find the vault here. It turns out that Tyreen is actually working with Malawan, and the children of the vault have been assaulting Atlas alongside them. Lorelei brings us to talk to the CEO of Atlas, Rhys, and he sounds ecstatic that the Crimson Raiders seemingly came to help their burning city, until he realizes it's just us. Rhys tasks us with finding his top agent that's preparing to find Malawan's strategic Gigamind, since it would have precious intel for the war. After fighting some Malawan troops, we meet his agent, Zero, and alongside him, we defeat the Gigamind, bringing it back to Rhys. Rhys promises in exchange for the intel, he'd help us find the vault, and it just so happens that with the intel, there are some leads to where the vault key's fragments can be found. The first being on Athenas. We head back to Sanctuary to contact Maya, and of course she's getting shot at by Malawan while we talk to her. We head to Athenas to help her out, and she tells us that the key fragment here is in an Iridian anchor hold. We meet up with her apprentice, Ava, an orphan who she had taken under her wing. Maya has a book that gives her some direction in using iridium to enhance her powers, so we collect some from this graveyard. And after taking care of Malawan, she uses her iridium-enhanced phase lock to open the door to the anchor hold. We grab the fragment, and Maya tells us that she has plans to have Ava inherit her siren ability when the time comes. She and Ava pack their bags and decide to join us on Sanctuary. We give the key to Tanis, and Rhys tells us that the CEO of Malawan, Katagawa Jr., has pointed a space laser at Atlas HQ and he needs help. The laser also happens to be powered by one of the key fragments they need, so Rhys is one hell of a negotiator. We head up there, and while Katagawa antagonizes Rhys by destroying his favorite places to visit, we eventually make it to the laser's controls and we shoot down Katagawa's luxury ship.
Eat my big bowl, Katagawa!
Grabbing the second vault key fragment, Rhys reveals he actually has the third fragment at Atlas headquarters, and then it tastes like sour apple. We head to the HQ, and it turns out that since Katagawa was still alive, Promethea is under siege again. Katagawa tells Rhys that Zero had betrayed him, but once we get to Rhys, it turns out that it's just a copy of Zero's suit that Katagawa is using. We kill him, Rhys thanks us, and he gives us the final fragment. Tanis then assembles the key fragments, and the plan is finally in motion, so we head to our first vault. After fighting some Guardians, we put the key in and fight the vault's monster, the Rampager. Once we enter the vault, Tannis starts talking to us telepathically and tells us that she's working on a new communications device based on Lilith's powers. Inside, we learn that this vault is actually connected to an energy conduit leading to another vault on Eden 6. And with that, we know our next destination. But before we leave though, Ava starts arguing with Maya about being left on the ship when suddenly Tyreen and Troy appear. They thank us for doing the hard work for them, and Tyreen leeches the power out of the dead Rampager before explaining the vault's powers comes from the monsters kept inside. Tyreen grabs Ava, and Maya phase locks Troy in response, holding him hostage. She tells Tyreen to drop Ava, but once she does, Troy saps the power and life out of Maya, and she crumbles to dust. It turns out Troy can leech power from not only Tyreen, but any siren, and he gains Maya's phase lock ability. They teleport away, and with Ava traumatized, we head back to Sanctuary to tell everyone the tragic news. Tannis and Lilith say a few words in Maya's honor, and how we need to keep moving forward so her death would mean something. But Ava lashes out at Lilith, blaming her for Maya's death and storming off. If you didn't already hate the twins enough, they then start to broadcast an edit of Maya's death footage, making jokes about it, with Troy mockingly showing himself using phase lock. Once they're done being assholes, we contact one of our old friends on Eden 6. We meant to talk to Alistair Hammerlock, but Wainwright Jacobs answers, saying that Hammerlock had been kidnapped and is being used as leverage by the COV. With the next vault in sight, and our friend in dire need, we head to Eden 6. Some stuff happened with the Jacobs Corporation recently, which sent it into peril, and it was at the hands of one of our pre-sequel Vault Hunters, Hammerlock's sister Aurelia. With the help of the Calypso twins, they had killed the CEO, Montgomery Jacobs, and took over the company, spreading the COV all over Eden 6 afterwards. Wainwright Jacobs, being the true heir to the company, meets us in a lodge he fled to after they killed his dad. He tells us that when Jacobs declined the COV's demand of the Vault here, it was then that things went into chaos. Jacobs didn't want their home planet to become like Promethea and Pandora, as where there's a vault, there's usually a war. Hammerlock and Wainwright are a couple, and he lets us know that if Hammerlock dies, he'd have nothing left. He's being held in a prison nearby, and Wainwright tells us that if we get him out, he'll find us the vault key. I guess it's time for a prison break. To help us are Brick, Mordecai, and Tiny Tina, who is not so tiny anymore. We get Tina some bomb supplies, blow open the gate, and head inside the prison. And after killing the warden, we successfully free Hammerlock. Once we bring him back to Wainwright, Aurelia tries to bribe us to leave Eden 6, but Mama ain't raised no sellout. We soon find out that Wainwright's father had left behind clues as to the location of the vault key, so we head to the Jacobs estate while pretending to accept Aurelia's offer to distract her while we look. We attempt to meet her, but it's a trap of course, and Troy is waiting for us there. Wainwright then interrupts Troy's power-crazed monologue, and Troy chases him, allowing us to keep searching for clues. We solve this Typhon de Leon-themed movie set puzzle to open some secret rooms that lead us to a special record. Wainwright says it must be what's on this record that would lead them to the vault key, since he's the only one with a machine capable of playing it. He'll have to fix the record player though, so he tasks us with recruiting a bunch of people for their resistance. To help with this, he directs us to a guy named Clay, who's declined Aurelia's bribes and is loyal to the Jacobs family. With him guiding us, we go and free a bunch of rebels to recruit them for our cause. Jacobs is then finally able to play the record, revealing the locations of the key fragments. The first is in the crashed Jacobs ship, the family jewel, and with the assistance of this talking teddy bear thing named Balix, who is the ship's navigator, we kill his ex-robot girlfriend to get to the first piece. The second piece is from Clay's old partner that had accepted Aurelia's bribe, so we hunt him down and get the second fragment. And the final fragment is hidden in the Jacobs powder cellar. After getting there via the secret entrance, we grab it. But right before we leave, Aurelia ambushes us, shooting Hammerlock in the stomach and freezing him along with Wainwright in ice. We defeat Aurelia, and at last, we can find the vault that Montgomery Jacobs hired Typhon de Leon to find all those years ago. After solving a final puzzle about the ways that the Jacobs family members died, we find out that the vault is directly connected to the estate, and we fight its monster, the Grave Ward. After we kill it, Tannis uses this new tech she was experimenting with to try and render the monster useless to the Calypsos so they can't leech its power. It's a success, but after we loot the vault, Tannis suddenly gets phase locked and teleported away by the twins. We head back to Sanctuary and get a broadcast from them antagonizing us. They say they found the key to the Great Vault and that it's huge, so they need a crazy amount of iridium to charge it. They started a pledge drive to get enough iridium, and their fans love it when they kill people on broadcast, so they made a vote for the next person. Tannis won the vote, and they're bringing her to something called Carnivora on Pandora. Hey, that rhymed. So Lilith tells us to head to Vaughn, since he'd know what's going on there. He tells us that Carnivora is actually a festival run by two murder streamers named Pain and Terror. Grabbing a sweet ride to gain entry, we fight some bandits, and it turns out that Carnivora is actually a giant moving vehicle, so we have to stop it. Once we do, we head in to fight Pain and Terror. Hey, I know those guys. This machine they're on has an iridium core on it, and once we destroy it, See, after Angel died in Borderlands 2, Tannis inherited her siren abilities. It's unknown whether Angel meant to pass it on to her, but if it wasn't intentional, Tannis basically would have had to win the lottery to get them. She decided to hide this, and she slowly started mastering her phase shift in a secret lab at an old doll mining site. This is how she'd been speaking to us in her head and charging the vault keys. With her rescue, she tells us that she knows where all of the iridium is being stored for opening the Great Vault. To get into their huge stronghold, though, Tannis needs to disable the turrets. She can do it with her phase shift ability, but she needs an iridium-enhancing machine she made in her secret lab. We go fetch it for her, but once we do, the twins broadcast to us again. We see a massive beam of energy hit Elpis, and they reveal that it's actually Elpis itself that's the key to the Great Vault. Since Troy has Maya's ability now, he powers himself with iridium to start charging it. With the twins now as close as ever to opening the Great Vault, we need to act fast. Gathering everyone we can, Tannis disables the turrets, and we assault the Cathedral of the Twin Gods. After fighting through hordes and hordes of their followers, we finally reach them, and Troy steps in to fight us. And of course, after a long battle, we defeat him and Tyreen. Maya's siren ability goes to its rightful owner, and when it seems like all is said and done, Tyreen gets up and leeches Troy's remaining power. Tremors cascade through Pandora, and Tyreen tells them that soon the Destroyer will wake up. And when it does, she'll leech off it and become a god. She causes debris to rain down on Lilith, Tannis, and Ava, seemingly killing them before she leaves. But it turns out that just in the nick of time, Ava had used her new abilities to shield them from the rubble. And it's now that we finally realize, after all of this time, the Great Vault, it's Pandora. If you can recall, the Eridians had noticed the stars blinking out and found that it was because of this being called the Destroyer. At the start of the video, I didn't emphasize how unbelievably massive and catastrophic this thing's existence is, and for good reason. The Destroyer was able to consume entire civilizations and absorb their knowledge for itself, making it extremely intelligent on top of everything. It was seemingly unkillable and a threat to the entire universe. So in their desperation, the Eridians came to Nyriad and the Sirens and came up with an idea to construct a planet-sized vault out of iridium, with its key disguised as its moon.
The prison known as Pandora is the most incredible cage ever constructed. An unbreakable lock meant to hold an unceasing evil for all eternity. Even for the Eridians, whose reach could pluck stars from across the void, it was the work of centuries.
For Pandora, they of course had to create a locking mechanism capable of sealing such a being inside. So they built the Pyre of Stars to do just that. They constructed numerous other vaults across the 6 galaxies as well for a multitude of purposes. As word of the construction of Pandora spread around Eridian society, there were some that would rather appease the Destroyer, and they called for a civil war. During the war, the Eridians created a living weapon known as the Warrior to combat the rebellion, and once they won, they sealed it inside a vault in case it was ever needed again. As part of their plan, they created a false vault on Pandora that would lure in potential treasure hunters every 200 years to feed the Destroyer so it'd be less likely to escape. This, of course, being the Vault of Borderlands 1. After the Eridians and Nyriad spent centuries constructing Pandora, everything was set. The Eridians lured the Destroyer to Pandora using their entire race as bait, since it was too intelligent to be tricked otherwise. Once it was inside, Nyriad used her phase leech ability to absorb all of the Eridians' life force and transferred it into the Pyre of Stars, killing the entire Eridian race and in the process, sealing the Destroyer inside. Nyriad mentions in her logs that a Guardian observed her doing all of this. This Guardian ended up being the Watcher, and it's where it got its name. This is exactly why Zarpedon was trying to destroy Elpis in the pre-sequel, after the Watcher had told her what would happen.
Like the Destroyer, my kind has been called by many names. Oracle, Angel, Witch. Rarely are the names used kindly. I used to hate the ones who feared us, believing them ignorant. I think now, after what I have done, I better understand.
Afterwards, Nyriad returned to her sisters to find that they had already fled. But they left behind information on how she could prevent her phase leech abilities from passing on to anyone else, since she and her coven believed that the universe would be brighter without a leech. And so Nyriad sealed herself inside of a vault on Necrotafeo in an attempt to stop her powers from ever being inherited again.
You know now all that I know. This was an epitaph, not for myself, but for the world I knew. I have brought ruin to the Sirens, murdered the Eridians, and imprisoned a primordial force of the universe. Perhaps I have earned your hatred, or your sympathy. Before I can put my fractured mind to rest, I must pass one more warning. You must never find the seventh.
Now, this warning she gives us is one of the most heavily speculated and debated topics within the lore. Is she warning us about herself or someone else? Who is the seventh siren? We do have a picture of somebody asking the game's writer if she was warning us about herself, and they replied that she isn't, but perhaps he's using obscure verbiage on purpose. Anyway, we're gonna speculate a bit more on this during Borderlands 4, but with everything said and done, this brings us back to where we left off in Borderlands 3. After we realize that Pandora is the Great Vault, we hear some chatter from an echo device on the ground, and it's Typhon de Leon trying to contact us. He tells us that if the Great Vault opens, we can say goodbye to Pandora, and that we need to get to Necrotafeo immediately. Once we meet him on Necrotafeo, he tells us about the Pyre of Stars, which he calls the Machine. It can serve as a backup plan and seal the destroyer a second time if need be. But to get inside, we need 4 vault keys, 3 of which we already have. The last we need is the one for the vault on Necrotafeo, and Typhon actually knows where it is, so he leads us to it, and we take it from his wife's headstone, Lita Calypso. Rewinding back, Typhon and Lita had crash-landed on Necrotafeo, and being stranded, they ended up getting married and found the vault, where they defeated the 7-headed vault monster inside. This happens to be the same vault that Nyriad had sealed herself in all those years ago, but afterwards, Typhon and Lita lived and slept together right there inside the vault. 3 years later, Lita gave birth to a pair of conjoined twins named Troy and Tyreen, but Lita unfortunately died during childbirth. These twins inherited Nyriad's siren ability, and Lita's death could have actually been due to them phase leeching her, but we aren't entirely sure. Typhon was able to separate his children, with Tyreen seemingly making a full recovery, but Troy was left without an arm and constantly needing to leech from his sister in order to survive. With their mother gone, Typhon tried his best to be a good father and protect his children by keeping them with him on Necrotafeo, but they grew up to be increasingly jaded and resentful of him. They thought he was keeping them in a cage. So eventually, they developed massive god complexes due to their powers, and they repaired Typhon's ship before flying off in pursuit of a way to live as gods, which is how they began to manipulate the bandit population. As we head to get the last vault key with Typhon, we hear lots of dialogue of Tyreen talking to her father while he's accompanying us. Once we have the key, we have Tannis charge it for us, and alongside her and Typhon, we use it to open the Pyre of Stars. In order to use the machine again, we need to link each of the 4 vaults to it so that we have enough power. So we run around the pyre and use all of the corresponding pedestals to connect them. While Tannis tries to seal Pandora with the machine, Tyreen stops her right before she does. Typhon steps in, trying to prevent his daughter from interfering, but she grabs him and he detonates a grenade to kill both of them. She contains the explosion though and reflects it back, leaving him fatally injured. Tyreen teleports away, leaving the machine unusable, and Typhon shares with us his final wish, which is to ensure that we aren't the last Vault Hunters. Tannis uses the machine's connection to Pandora to create a portal back to it, but when we arrive back, the destroyer is free of its chains. And once we find Tyreen, she allows it to take her, phase leeching its power and becoming a brand new being entirely. After a long fight, we finally defeat her, and all of the powers she had leeched are released, giving Lilith her powers back. This means that Phase Leech is out there somewhere again, but we don't know who has it or where. Tyreen and the Destroyer are dead, and the universe is free of their wrath, but the Great Vault is still opening. Elpis is literally tearing Pandora apart. Tannis and Ava frantically think of a way to stop it, but Lilith remains calm and thinks to herself.
Run towards the fire. Sanctuary's yours, Ava. Be ready.
What does Lilith think she's doing?
Closing the Great Vault. She's saving Pandora.
That could kill her!
She knows.
Pandora felt the feeling of peace for possibly the first time ever, and Lilith disappeared alongside Elpis once she had saved it. This leads us perfectly into the newest game in the franchise, Borderlands 4. The planet Kairos had remained a secret for thousands of years due to the veil that made it invisible and impossible to find. Kairos is ruled by a man made immortal due to alien technology named the Timekeeper, and he keeps the planet and its people on lockdown. However, it hadn't always been like this. Before anyone else was on the planet, it was just the Timekeeper and Nyriad. See, before Nyriad sealed herself on Necrotafeo, there was a point in her timeline where she was actually teleported to Kairos with no return portal. Did she meet the Timekeeper? And how did she make it back to Necrotafeo? Things we'll talk about a bit later, but it was some point after Nyriad had left that the first group of humans would find Kairos. And these humans worked with the Timekeeper to establish his order. They created this device called a bolt, and once someone made it to the planet, he would install said bolts in them, allowing him to monitor and take control of them whenever he pleased. The reason for all this security being the vault on Kairos, which he had been trying to keep under wraps. What was in the vault and why was he protecting it? Well, nobody knew, but it's rumored among the people that it's his source of immortality. In recent years, Kairos had spun into chaos due to the fact that Lilith had actually teleported Elpis away from Pandora, ending up here. The barrier that made Kairos almost impossible to find was broken from the teleportation, allowing it to be found, and Lilith was still missing. The game takes place 6 years after this event, and sometime during the first 4 years, the Crimson Raiders had split up, desperately trying to find Lilith. With Kairos on display, rumors of its vault spread, and where there are vaults, there are vault hunters. So let me introduce you to them. We have Rafa, Harlow, Amon, and our siren Vex. Once we land on Kairos, we do some bandit killing before getting captured by the Timekeeper's order. He installs a bolt into us and has a word, but he's interrupted by this guy named RJ breaking us out. He lets us know he's a vault hunter, and he's part of a group called the Crimson Resistance, who are trying to free the planet from the Timekeeper's grasp. He also tells us about echo bots that would actually disable the bolt's signal, giving less control to the Timekeeper. Escaping the prison compound with RJ, we kill its warden, but it's here that the Timekeeper lets us know just how much control he has over us and the people of the planet. He takes control of our body and starts choking RJ, but RJ transfers his echo device to us, making the Timekeeper control him instead. He forces RJ to stab himself, and some of the Timekeeper's ships fire at us, causing us to fall off the cliff. We wake up on a beach in a place called the Fade Fields, and hear a mysterious voice calling out to us that sounds exactly like Lilith, and within a few seconds we already hear Claptrap moving towards us and yapping as always. He tells us that he's the leader of the Resistance, and then recruits us, bringing us to their safe house. The Crimson Resistance needs more recruits if they want to actually succeed in their rebellion, so Claptrap tasks us with sending a broadcast to people around Kairos, letting them know. A group known as the Outbounders get our signal and say that they're under assault by the Order. They let us know they'll join the Crimson Resistance, so we head over and lend them a hand. One of the Timekeeper's commanders, who goes by the name of Idolator Soul, had been terrorizing the Fade Fields and Outbounders as of late, and after warding off one of their attacks, we meet Rush, the Outbounders' leader.
Welcome to the Outbounders, friend. And welcome to the Crimson Resistance.
The Outbounders had already planned to leave the planet eventually, but freeing the entire planet, they're definitely on board. He has us meet his second in command, Conway, and she gives us a Destiny Sparrow to use around Kairos. Soul had spoken of a secret weapon he was going to use before he pulled his troops out, so Rush tasks us with looking into it. We learn that the weapon Soul talked about is a bioweapon called Locust, and Conway says we might need help from within the Order to pursue this any further. Lucky for us, Rush tells us that Soul had been looking for an escaped Order scientist for years, and we head out to find her. This is Zadra, and she gets kidnapped literally 5 seconds after we start talking to her. So we have to fight through a bunch of the Order's forces before we finally get to speak to her. We overhear her talking to the Timekeeper, and it seems he really wants her back in the Order. We then tell her why we need her, and she's actually willing to help us. So we escape with her, and she leads us to her lab. She tells us that when the moon had shattered the veil in Kairos, the Timekeeper sealed the walls to their city, and he never strays from within the vault in his tower. The only way into the tower is with 3 command bolts that he had given to his commanders, one of which, of course, belongs to Soul. The other 2 belong to a mad scientist named Vile Lictor and the Ripper Queen named Callus. Callus used to work for the Timekeeper, obviously, but now she resides elsewhere, being worshipped by her bandits. Now, since Borderlands 4 is open world, we can actually tackle these commanders in any order, but for simplicity's sake, I'll just tell it in the order I did. While we head to Sol's production facility, Rush tells us he has an odd feeling about Zadra, and he wants to do some digging. Once we get there, we sabotage the facility, but an airship loaded with locusts starts sieging the Outbounders HQ, so we head back and stop it. With some of Rush's men dying in the attack, he was not happy, and when Zadra proposes to raid Sol's fortress head-on, it only makes things worse. Rush doesn't want to sacrifice any more of his men, and he reveals what he dug up about Zadra. Zadra was among the first group of humans to come to Kairos, and is actually the Timekeeper's favorite, whatever that means. He had even granted her immortality, just like he has. She assures us that it doesn't matter anymore, and she does want to free Kairos, just like us, so Rush proposes a different, more strategic plan. We salvage Sol's own Locust missiles, and use them against him to blow open the gate. After heading in and fighting a number of his men, we face him.
You will die, and I will return to the Timekeeper's side.
Once we defeat Idolator Sol, we retrieve the first command bolt. We have a little celebration at the Outbounders HQ, and Rush lets us know that the Outbounders will always stand at our side. But as the Crimson Resistance kept gaining ground on Kairos, the Timekeeper was watching. Our next destination would be this mountainous desert called Carcadia Burn. Zadra tells us that the Ripper Queen had one of the command bolts, but at some point she ripped it out of herself, and now a group of former Order aristocrats called the Electi have it. We need to seek out a woman named Levane, and we get an Electi distress call right after from this guy named Quent. The Electi have been getting attacked by the Rippers for some time, and Quent gets us in contact with Levane. She tells us if we can help restore her supply lines, then the command bolt is ours. Shortly after, we get a message from Kairos, the Ripper Queen herself, threatening us, but unfazed, we do some things to try and thwart the Rippers. Unfortunately, the plans don't work out, and with no other option, we turn to a familiar face for some help, and we sense some tension between Levane and this person. Quent leads us to a bar, and dude, I'm starting to think Moxie's some kind of omnipresent alien. Why does she run every bar in the goddamn universe and is always everywhere? Like, is she a fucking god? What is going on? Anyway, it's here that we meet Zane and Moxie. Zane is a little skeptical of helping us at first, but as soon as Quent mentions Levane being the one who asked for him, he's immediately on board. Zane tells us he crashed on Kairos with Moxie and some of the Crimson Raiders, and he introduces us to his thresher, Sophia. With her help, we destroy a bunch of Ripper catapults, and Kairos continues talking to us. She actually wants her command bolt back, but we don't really know why. While we were out destroying catapults, Carcadia City started getting attacked, so we head over to help. During the attack, the Ripper Queen ends up killing Sophia and taking the command bolt back from the Electi. But after dealing with the remaining Ripper forces, we finally meet Levane. Shortly after, Zane goes missing. We track him to an old Order refinery, and after a lot of fighting, we find out that the Ripper Queen needs the bolt to power a space elevator she's using to try and get to Elpis in pursuit of becoming a god. We eventually make it to her fortress and face her in her lair.
Kairos is dead. I killed her. But that was only the beginning. Now, it's your turn.
Defeating Kairos, we retrieve the second command bolt, and Levane says the Electi would now gladly back the Crimson Resistance as thanks for everything we did for them. With only one more command bolt remaining, we head to a place called Terminus Range. Zadra tells us how the augurs who live here aren't the rebel type, and prefer to just do what the Timekeeper tells them, which is to mine Ordinite in exchange for some degree of freedom. The area is ruled by the last commander we need to find, Vile Lictor. There is, however, one augur leader that is willing to fight, named Defiant Calder, though we learn he was exiled. We eventually meet him, and he tells us the Crimson Resistance sounds right up his alley, but first he wants help retrieving a lost relic that's sacred to his people. He hopes that if he gives it back to the Augur Council, that his clave would be exonerated from being exiled. Once we retrieve it, the relic speaks to us, and it's the same voice from the beginning of the game that sounds just like Lilith. The relic says to seek the Siren, and that Iridium is the key. We head back to the main Augur settlement, and the council hears call her out, since we got the relic back. Afterwards, we head out searching for what the relic told us, finding the crashed Sanctuary 3, and with it, Amara. She gives us the details on how they got here. They were shot down by the Order when looking for Lilith. We tell Amara about how the relic said Iridium is the key, and Amara tells us that Kairos doesn't have any. However, Iridium does rain down from Elpis occasionally, and they call it Moonfall. With Amara, we head to a Moonfall site, but of course, the Order got there first and are mining the Iridium. Going around the site and sabotaging it, Vile Lictor speaks to us saying he has a test subject for Iridium. Amara has a suspicion it could be Lilith, and we talk to Calder for some more info. He tells us where this subject may be, and heading there, we fight his vile prototypes and find this tube with a phase rift in it. A person pops out and runs into us, using phase walk. Amara says that had to be Lilith, speculating on what Lictor was doing to her and why. But Vile Lictor was still a problem, as he would use his Iridium research and experiments to try and become a god, using artificial siren powers to start tearing apart reality. With Lictor's fortress seeming impenetrable, Calder comes up with a solution. We could use one of his facilities with phase rifts in it to teleport into the fortress. So after doing so, and fighting through his experiments and men, we find Lictor's sanctum. He cuts Amara's arm off, and with her out of commission, it's up to us.
This world, this mountain, this flesh, I am the prisoner no longer. You think your enemy is human, but you face a god!
During the final fight, he teleports us into the phase, and once we defeat him, we take the final command bolt, but that masked person we saw earlier appears again, and it's not Lilith, it's RJ. RJ tells us about how after he was stabbed, the Timekeeper sent him to Vile Lictor, and he talks about the horrible experiments he had to endure. This gave him artificial siren powers, and I'm sure you can tell, but, well, it also made him go insane. He says that it's Lilith's fault that all of this happened, and that she's still stuck. He plans to keep it that way, and he says we shouldn't be here, pushing us out of the phase with his powers. Calder says, just like the other groups we helped, they'd be glad to join our resistance, and they even make Amara a new mechanical arm. With all of the command bolts now in our hands, we bring them to Zadra. While she works on the bolts, fixing them up for us, it's here she tells us the full truth. She was the one who created the bolts for the Timekeeper, even the one in our own head. She believed in his order, she believed in him, and mistook his heartlessness for compassion. These sins, she wants nothing more than to atone for. She wants to free Kairos and make things right. She says that we've given Kairos something else to believe in, and she thanks us for it. But then she tells us even though we have the command bolts, Dominion City is still sealed, and she tells us to meet Amara. Amara tells us that she realized Lilith had been stuck in the phase this whole time. When she teleported to Elpis to Kairos, she used the phase dimension, and she didn't even have enough power to get out after. So now we need to get to Elpis, except Sanctuary isn't flying anytime soon. Zane chimes in and suggests we use the Ripper Queen's space elevator instead. So we head back to Kalos' fortress to fix and hack the elevator, using her bolt to power it. Once we start ascending to Elpis, RJ tries to stop us with some more vile experiments, and he eventually shows himself, getting hold of Amara, but we kick his ass anyway. Finally making it to Elpis, we fight through Order and Ripper forces to make it to the core. We find out that the Ripper Queen is still alive up here, but we have to focus on the task at hand, finding Lilith. Amara opens a portal into Elpis' core, and we enter the phase, speaking to Lilith, or whatever remains of her psyche. She talks in the past, present, and future all jumbled together because of the time warping effects in the phase dimension. She continues to call out for help, and finally, we reach her, waking her up and taking her out. She passes out, and Callus breaks off the piece of rock we're standing on, sending us plummeting towards Kairos while she challenges us one final time. Once we defeat her for good, Lilith saves us by teleporting us back to Kairos. Catching her up to speed with what's going on, Zadra contacts us afterwards, telling us that one of the moon chunks from Elpis coincidentally just blasted a hole into Dominion City. With Lilith found, it's time to get to the Timekeeper. We meet up with Zadra within the city and head over to start our assault on the Timekeeper's tower. But before we do, a massive targeting system prevents us from entering. Zadra tells us that it can be overloaded with an Ordinite capacitor, so with the direction of Calder, we grab one. When we disable the turret, however, it turns out it's a trap to target our Echo bot, allowing him to take control of us. And once he does, Zadra teleports us back to her, not knowing that it's the Timekeeper she's now speaking to.
They are not tools, they are people. We enslaved them. I enslaved them.
Zadra, where's your commitment to my order? You've grown so sentimental.
Perhaps you could, too.
Who says I haven't?
Vault Hunter, I know he's making you watch. You were right. No plan survives. Everything breaks. Everything.
After the Timekeeper shoots Zadra, he tries to make us shoot ourselves as well, but we're able to stop him. An echo log Zadra left behind reveals she left us something. Heading to an internet cafe within the city, it turns out that using her last words, she said to us, "Everything breaks," as a password, which unlocks one of the computers containing all of the Order's information. blueprints, databases, command scripts, and with all this new intel, we're able to get back into the Terminus district and ascend the tower, using the 3 command bolts to enter the Timekeeper's chambers. Before we enter though, he tries to guilt trip us, taking control of all of our friends and having them speak to us on our Echo device, threatening that he'd kill them. But unfazed, we face him.
My order is eternal. You are a moment that shall soon pass.
Just when we thought we defeated him, we learn the Timekeeper's true nature.
You think you're the prisoner? You did all of this yourself!
Is that what I look like through the eyes of a Vault Hunter? Someone who has a choice. I was given an order.
After a long battle, we finally defeat the Kairos Vault Guardian. We destroy the device, allowing him control of the citizens, and liberate Kairos, reminding him that eventually, everything breaks. With the Timekeeper revealed as the Vault's Guardian, this gives us a lot of questions about him, and especially Nyriad. He had been tasked with guarding this vault in front of us, but also to imprison Nyriad. At some point, she had entered a vault arch that brought her to Kairos with no return portal, which she says she thinks was intentional. With no way back, she was lost, roaming the planet for hundreds of days. Even though Kairos felt like a paradise, Nyriad knew that it was a prison, and perhaps Kairos was meant to feel like a paradise to distract from that idea. With her phase leech ability, though, it had to feed regularly. She leeched from a great tree, and to her surprise, she felt the warmth of another siren, one who leeched that same tree. But Nyriad has the same power, which means she must be gone, and she has no doubt in her mind that Kairos is where that siren had died. She eventually moved to the Terminus region and actually found relics, glyphs, and artifacts of an ancient civilization, but nobody remained. The craftsmanship was an exact match of the vault arch that she had came through to get to Kairos, and they were made of a peculiar golden metal. This metal is the Ordinite that the augurs later mined in Terminus range, and it turns out that it has an interesting property where it also leeches things and is hungry, similar to Nyriad's ability. Nyriad eventually tried contacting her siren sisters. She opened up her mind and called out, specifically to someone named Iris, who back then was the one with Lilith's ability. Nyriad was hoping to reach her so she could be teleported off the planet, but the barrier around Kairos wouldn't allow it. All she heard was her own voice rebounding back to her.
As I lay in the grass, I realized I will die here, alone. The only notice of my passing will be a girl somewhere out there in the universe, looking down at her skin and seeing tattoos that weren't there the moment before. It was at that moment I noticed another shadow. There is someone else here.
Nyriad eventually met the Timekeepers, or in other words, her jailer. They spoke to each other multiple times and emphasized that she would have to come to terms with this place and live here. Eventually, though, Nyriad had come up with a plan to use the Ordinite to absorb as much energy as she could with it, amplifying her voice to pierce the barrier blocking her call to Iris. The Timekeeper caught on to this and tried getting rid of all the wildlife, trees, and anything she could sap for power to stop this plan. But eventually, she met the Timekeeper again, asking why he holds her prisoner, to which he replied that it's his purpose. And it's then when Nyriad grabs him and uses him as a beacon, along with all of the power stored within her Ordinite, and calls out to Iris to bring her home. And with a flash of fire, she was gone, as the Timekeeper deemed himself a failure. Before Borderlands 4, whether or not Nyriad and her coven were humans was actually a topic of debate for a long time. But with the logs in this game, we get confirmation that they definitely were, and it seems like humanity began long before we thought it did. Something we also learned in 4 is that sirens get their abilities from the phase. But with all this being said, it sure sounds like the Eridians had created a prison for the phase leech sirens, knowing how catastrophic it could potentially be if given to the wrong person. Before Nyriad, they held one of the phase leech sirens on Kairos as well, and she eventually died there. The Eridians were aware of the sirens for quite some time before they contacted Nyriad to help with the destroyer, so it would make sense. She went to a prison planet meant to contain her ability, but how did she come across this vault that brought her there? And why would she escape if she was going to seal herself anyway? I have so many different theories on what's actually happening here, as well as just overall in the Borderlands franchise, but it's way too much, so hey, maybe in a future video. All you need to know for now is that there is plausible evidence pointing to this being either before or after the sealing of the destroyer, but I can't pinpoint it exactly. It's not really news to us that the Timekeeper is similar to the Watcher in the way he acts on his own accord, but later on, he created 3 primordial guardians similar to himself. It's possible he did this because he saw himself as a failure from not being able to keep Nyriad there and wanted a new purpose. But he did still have the important vault to guard, unless that vault was made after Nyriad escaped? Anyway, he eventually saw the Guardians' imperfections and hated them, sealing them in their own vaults around Kairos, out of sight. The one who explains all of this to us is actually the Watcher themselves while we explore the primordial vaults. There's also an NPC that is heavily implied to be the Watcher in disguise, or at least something they created. It's sort of a tangent, and I'm gonna avoid it in this video, but shout out to Eruption Fang because he has a great video talking about it if you're interested. With Kairos' foundational history explained, it brings us back to the ending of Borderlands 4 and what happens after we defeat the Timekeeper. When we're about to enter Kairos' vault, RJ teleports us into the phase since he's not done with us.
Those powers are killing you. Maybe Lilith can help.
I don't want to talk to Lilith! I want to be free. One way or another.
Once we defeat him, Lilith teleports us out of the phase and into the vault. And without further delay, we see what's inside. A distorted version of Lilith's voice starts to talk to us, saying this place is not a place, it's a moment. The deathbed of the universe. She says she's all that's left, and a projection of her appears. She hands us an item called a deodand, and says it's a spark. We can't stop what's coming, but with it, we might be able to survive. She says we should go now, while there is still a now, and that it all started with fire, ending with fire, letting us know she'll keep the lights on as long as she can before disappearing and lighting up the sky. Pretty fucking cryptic, huh? I want to hone in on the things she said here, and the object that she gave us, the deodand. If you aren't familiar with the word, a deodand in law terms is an object or instrument forfeited because it caused a person's death. The description of it reads, she wants what's hers, which could be talking about Lilith, or maybe even the 7th siren Nyriad warned us about. She tells us that with the deodand, we may be able to survive, so it may be the only thing we can use to somewhat combat whatever force we face in the future. We can't possibly know, but now we know that the reason the Timekeeper has the name he does is because he was guarding this moment in time. So where does this bring us now? The most important questions and things I want to think about are, why is there Eridian architecture resembling Lilith, or at the very least her specific siren ability? Is this moment in the past, or is it in the future? The way the projection talks about it heavily implies it's in the future. Maybe this structure is a prophecy explaining who would save the universe. Or maybe this place is somewhere we've simply never been anywhere near, or built later on in the timeline by some Eridians that are still alive. Following the rule of the 6 sirens existing in the universe, it is possible that this projection of Lilith is how a 7th siren can exist within this law. And finding this moment in time is what Nyriad warned us of. But I do think it's a lot more likely that the 7th siren is a future antagonist or ally in the war to come. I do apologize for rapidly firing mini theories at you, but whatever it may be, they really mindfucked us with this ending. There are so many possibilities, and it's starting to give me a headache. When the game's DLCs come out, we're probably going to learn a lot more. And with the constant reminders that a war is coming, it's safe to say that pretty soon, we're going to be thrown into a battle. But how did you enjoy the lore of Borderlands? Honestly, it's a lot to digest, and I almost went fucking insane trying to understand it all, especially the ending of 4. Do you have any theories of your own? Know anything I missed? Why don't you let me know in the comments below. If you like our videos, make sure to subscribe. Otherwise, I'm gonna lock